Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. The Western propaganda machine, manipulated by the Zionists, tried to provide a different narrative to the entire Israeli-Palestinian issue, to the extent that prior to October 7th, everything was peaceful, and it was the Hamas attack on October 7, 2023 that brought about the chaos and pandemonium that we are witnessing currently in the affected areas. The situation is not that. The true situation is something different. Therefore, there is a need to visit history and see up to 7th October 2023 what happened. That would give us some perspective of the situation. Basically, the whole thing involves around hatred of the Jews, or after somewhere around the early 19th century, the term that is used, anti-Semitism. In fact, tracing the history of hatred of Jews goes back to the Roman period, and from the beginning of the Anno Domini.
History of anti-Semitism. Christianity became the state religion of Rome in the 4th century. Jews became the victims of religious intolerance and political oppression. Extreme hostility towards Jews occasionally resulted in attacks against them and the burning of their synagogues. Actions against Jews were reflected in the edicts imposed on them by church councils and state laws. Discrimination became worst in the 5th century. The Codex Theodosianus, 438, barred Jews from the civil service, the army, and the legal profession. Synagogues were confiscated, and old synagogues could only be repaired if they were in danger of collapsing.
I will not go back to that extent because time is insufficient for such a discussion. What I would prefer is to go up to the late medieval period, which is circa 13th century onwards. France, under an edict of King Louis IX, expelled thousands of Jews from France. Then in the year 1290, under an edict of King Edward I, Britain expelled 3,000 Jews from Britain. Then in Spain, history has taught us that in 1475 there was the famous Spanish Inquisition. There, 30,000 Jews were killed during the Spanish Inquisition. And famously, under an edict by Queen Isabella in 1492, the entire Jewish population were expelled from Spain. And during that time, the Ottoman ruler bin Yazid, if I get the name correct, he sent his fleet of ships to bring the Jews to the Ottoman territory. Thousands of Jews. That was done by the Ottoman ruler when Queen Isabella of Spain expelled Jews from Spain. Then we see the Bolshevik revolution in Russia, Soviet Union at that time, in 1917. when 30,000 Ukrainian Jews were killed. Coming down further, in 1939, from 1939 onwards, we saw the massacre of Jews in Europe, plus especially in Germany, where Hitler killed 6 million Jews. To sum up all these events, to sum up all these events, Jew hatredness started not from the Muslims or not from the Arabs, but from the Europeans and the East Europeans. And to factor in this whole issue into a Muslim affair or an Arab affair is grossly unjust. Therefore, we need to know the historical facts of these things in order to make a fair, just, reasonable evaluation and assessment of the current situation. Because the Zionist media and the Zionist propaganda always changes the narrative, because this is their job. This is their job. Now, during this period, from around the 15th, 16th century, the entire region, almost, of the Middle East was under the Ottoman rule. And most parts of the Balkan Peninsula, Bosnia, Herzegovina, Macedonia, Montenegro, Hungary, Bulgaria, all of these and parts of Ukraine were under the Ottoman rule. And from this side, North Africa. Now, during this period, 14th, 15th century, when the Ottomans were ruling all these areas, including many parts, major portions of the of Eastern Europe, the Jews were living there. But they lived with honor, dignity, and respect under the Ottoman rulers. Now, who were the Ottoman rulers? They were Muslims. So, therefore, and during this period, it was not only the Jews, even the Christians. Even the Christians were living under the Ottoman rulership during this period. So that gives us roughly a very brief background from the 13th century onwards as to where Jew hatredness began and how it developed into to culminate with the Holocaust, which Hitler was responsible for.